Artemis I is a demonstration flight for future missions. What we're demonstrating is taking the Orion spacecraft and the service module that flies with it to the moon and then return it safely.
7, 6, 5, 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters ignition. And liftoff of Artemis I. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
My name is Jeremy Graeber. I'm the Chief of the Test, Launch, and Recovery Branch here as a part of the Exploration Ground Systems program, and I'm also the Assistant Launch Director for the Artemis I mission. I'm a graduate from FSU in 1996 from the College of Engineering with a bachelor's in Mechanical Engineering. So for me, this job working for NASA has always been a life goal for me, and I've been lucky enough to get to work towards that. You know, I've told this story before, but it really kind of tells you how early this started for me. During the beginning of the space shuttle program, the orbiters were basically, they were built in California and then they were transported to Florida to then go through their final preparations and all of the work that goes into their next phase of the mission. And so in doing that, right, the orbiters were transported on a 747. Well, it just so happened when we lived in Denver that that was one of the stopping points on the journey across the country. And so my dad said, come on, let's go see what the next new spaceship is going to be for the United States. And I was 6 or 7 years old at the time, and I distinctly remember walking up to the fence line of the airport and like in the deep grass and looking across the runway and seeing this new space shuttle on top of a 747, and I was sold right then. So my childhood was awesome. I really did have a great childhood, and you know, my biggest inspiration, who I looked up to, absolutely were my parents, and they're the main reason why I had such a great childhood. I was lucky enough, based on what my dad did for a living, that we actually moved around to a couple of different areas. Born in Florida, moved to Denver, Colorado when I was about 3. When I was about 6 or 7, we moved to just north of New York City in a small town called Brewster, New York, and then eventually, when I was about 7th grade, we moved down to Tampa, Florida. So kind of big circle throughout the country, got to see a whole lot of different areas. And, you know, my parents were there for everything, you know, whether it was sports or school or whatever. They were just very supportive of me and my 2 sisters. My factors for choosing Florida State University, I actually didn't start out at Florida State. My first year as a freshman, I went to the University of South Carolina, and I played soccer all growing up as a kid. I was an All-American goalkeeper in high school, and was fortunate enough to be able to be selected to come and play at University of South Carolina. Once I was there, went through my freshman year and really kind of looked at the challenges of being a student athlete and being an engineering major. That was really a tough thing to do. And looking in the future at that point in time, really didn't see a professional career coming in the soccer arena. So it really kind of made the decision. It was you know, partially financial, partially a lot of other things, but ultimately what drew me back to Florida State, Florida State was my #1 Florida school. There was no men's soccer, so that wasn't an option to play. But coming back, it really was my family and my friends. My sister Deb was at Florida State at the time. My best friend was at Florida State, and I had been there during my freshman year and gotten to see kind of what it was all about at FSU, and it was really an easy decision for me when I decided to transfer. Family, friends, and just it felt like home. Both my daughters have completely different interests from each other and from me, and that's great. I really, from when they were little, it was, let's encourage them to go down the path that they want to go down, and whatever that might be. And the same thing goes for their college of choice, right? We definitely wanted to take advantage of bright futures here in Florida. So in-state was definitely highly desired over any out-of-state, but we didn't tell them, FSU is where you had to go. But they've grown up being Florida State fans, going to Florida State games, and we have relatives that live in Tallahassee. We have friends that are in Tallahassee that we see on a regular basis, and they had friends that wanted to go to Florida State. And so I think it really just felt like an extension of home to go to Florida State, and thankfully they've both had great experiences there and continue to, and it's just, it makes me really proud of them. My favorite Florida State memory, so there's a bunch of them, whether it's playing intramural sports with my fraternity, Phi Gamma Delta, Fiji, as everybody really knows them, just spending time with friends, going to football games, but ultimately I would say my fondest memory actually occurred about a little over a year after I graduated. I met my wife on a football weekend. I'll just tell a quick story. It was I was living in Orlando, working, living with a fraternity brother of mine. Got home from work and he said, "Hey, you want to go up to a game?" This is Friday night. I kind of was tired. All right, I'll go. And terrible rainstorms the whole drive. It was just miserable getting up there. And a similar, in parallel story, my to-be wife, Stephanie, was going through the same thing. She had come home from her job as an elementary art teacher, and she was living with her brother, and her brother is one of my fraternity brothers. And so he convinced her, "Come on, let's go up to the game." And she decided, okay, we'll go. And we met that Friday night, and we've been together ever since. And, I really attribute that to a lot of different things, but FSU is the key point of how we met. And we've spent, our whole married life going to games. Now both of our daughters go to FSU. It's just it's a family tradition. And so, I'd say that's my fondest memory. So my career path, I was hired by United Space Alliance in the fall of 1996, and started out here in September. And United Space Alliance was the main contractor for the space shuttle program. So from a engineering and an operations perspective, United Space Alliance had that responsibility. And so I hired in as a fuel cell and cryogenics engineer. And it was a great first job. It was excellent because I was able to start out at the very bottom and work my way all the way up through the different levels of engineering discipline. I started out with the ground support equipment and all of the equipment out at the launch pads and in our orbiter processing facilities and our mobile launch platforms to really understand how our system worked. And then eventually I was able to become the lead fuel cell engineer for Space Shuttle Endeavour. And in doing that, that put me as part of the launch team for Space Shuttle Endeavour. And that's where we are today. And Firing Room 1 was kind of my first opportunity to experience a launch as an engineer in the control room and all the things that come with that. As I moved through that, I had an opportunity to come over to NASA and work in the NASA Test Directors organization. And that job's a little bit different than a technical engineer. It's much more of an operations and coordination and orchestration type of position. And really, I've been doing that kind of work ever since, and that was in 2004. I've gotten to do a lot of amazing and exciting jobs and missions throughout that time frame. All leading to where we are today with the Artemis missions. All right, so what you're looking at right here is the Artemis rocket. it's made up of a whole lot of different parts and pieces that put us in a position to be able to take to launch the most powerful rocket that's ever been developed, ever been launched. It's sitting over here in Vehicle Assembly Building, the VAB, High Bay 3. And the part of it that you see is the top of the rocket. Kind of below here, there's a whole bunch more rockets, all connected to our mobile launcher. I'll kind of go from the top down. At the very top is the launch abort system. For Artemis I, that system is inert. It's not a capable system, but for Artemis II, it will be fully operational and capable, and it's an emergency system in case there was an issue or some problem that needed to pull the Orion spacecraft, where the astronauts will be flying away from the rest of the vehicle to protect them. So that's the top piece. Underneath that U.S. flag you see up there, the Orion spacecraft is inside of that enclosure, and that's where the astronauts will fly on Artemis II. Artemis I will be an uncrewed mission, but it's right inside there. Below that, where you see the NASA meatball and the ESA logo, that's the European Space Agency, that is our service module, and that will fly with the Orion spacecraft all the way to the moon. It provides power through the solar arrays and batteries, as well as all of the other capabilities that the spacecraft needs. And so things like breathing air and other things for the crew will also be housed in the service module. Below that, where the rocket kind of starts to spread, you get to our interim cryopropulsion stage. That's our upper stage that will, in that part, there's basically a propulsion unit with a big rocket engine on the bottom of it inside of that orange area. And that basically is the power that will take the service module and the spacecraft, the Orion spacecraft, to the moon, leave Earth's gravity. Everything below that, you see the solid rocket boosters on either side, and the core stage that's below that, that's the capability to get all of this off the ground and into low Earth orbit. So it's a massive capability that will allow us to be able to send bigger and bigger payloads to the moon in a single launch. There are other capable rockets that can do different things, but this is the only rocket that allows us to send heavy payloads to the moon on a single flight. And so that's what you're looking at. We're, like I said, just over 24 hours from rolling this vehicle out to Launch Pad 39B and getting everything prepped and ready to launch.
This episode is sponsored by the Alumni Benefits Program. Travel is back. If you're planning a trip and want peace of mind, don't forget travel insurance. With flight delays, lost baggage, and unexpected illnesses, it's more important than ever to protect your trip. Buying travel insurance through the Alumni Benefits Program is easy. Get a quick quote, compare plans, and choose the right coverage for your travel needs and budget. See for yourself the additional comfort our plans can provide. Visit fsualumnibenefits.com. That's fsualumnibenefits.com.